The loneliness, only God can bring you out of that, because I found myself like, as I stated, when I went out into the community, I didn't break down. But at home, I would just like lay on my bed, on the edge of my bed. I would always end up, usually when I felt like, start praying, because I know you pray. So I would get on my knees, and I would find myself, I didn't even realize by the time I came out of the prayer that I had cried so much, and all kind of body fluids from the top of my face and stuff, mouth and everything would just be wet, the whole bed, the whole circle. And then I would end up many times just end up falling asleep right there. I didn't even realize that I did that. If you do ask why, you ask why. And you go to sleep, or you just stay there till you can't cry anymore. You keep crying till you can't cry anymore. You just will cry.
Some people want to put your sorrow or your grieving in a box. They want to put a timetable on it. And you can't put a timetable on grieving. And I try to tell them that. Please don't let someone say, well, now she should be over it now. Or, whatever they want to tell you, because you can't do that. Even with getting rid of clothing. I still have some of Dave's clothing, and I got rid of most of it. But people might look at me and say, oh, but it's okay. He had hunting and skiing clothes in a closet. That closet is really hard for me to open. And way back initially, right before the service, when we were meeting with the ministers, I was so distraught. I couldn't think. The ministers, the funeral director said, we need a Social Security number. I ran upstairs to get it, and I came down in tears. I said, how am I ever going to survive if I can't find a Social Security number?
The reality set in, I think it probably was several months later, when I realized that his truck was not going to be pulling up the driveway. And the children had all moved out except for my youngest daughter. And people stopped calling. And you realize that you're alone.
I felt a series of things. I felt rage. I felt sorry for myself. It was, besides the rage, it was anger. It was envy. I hated him for leaving. I was kind of jealous of the fact that he was in a better place, because I was stuck with the bills and the kids and everything. And it just took me to another level that I would never, ever want anyone to experience. But this is life, and everybody has to go through certain things, and I understand that. But when I came to grips with reality, more than anything, I felt anger. Anger was the most thing for me.
When reality set in and I realized that I was home alone and he was not coming home again, I felt so alone and so disappointed that I was no longer able to share life with him.
Yeah, I think initially there's a lot of people around when you're initially grieving, or when I lost Ray. The reality, even though it was there, wasn't there. With him having cancer, I think there's almost a pre-grieving where I had time to know that this was coming, but yet when it actually happened, the reality was more than what I thought it would be. It was more difficult or painful than I thought it would be. And as people kind of left from my side, I think that as time went on, it became more difficult, and that reality became more evident. Now, when that day was, I'm not sure. It wasn't in the first month. It may be a little after that. But each day, the reality as I came home to the empty house became more evident. As I moved out of Santa Rota's and got my own place, it became a lot more evident that I'm here alone.
The hardest time of the day for me is when I come home from work and my daughter is not home many times and I have to eat by myself. And eating the right food is very hard. It's much easier to pick at the snack food than eat a good course meal. And of course then in the evening, going to an empty bed is also very difficult.
I think, well, I know my eating habits have changed because I would love now to make Dave's favorite meal. I would love to just cook his meal because he never complained about a meal. Anything was fine. And I miss that. I miss not being able to say, you know, what do you want for supper tonight? And just surprising him. And I just love to cook. And I do some. But there's definitely changes there.
My appetite was affected very much. I did lose some unwanted pounds, but it didn't, I'm not sure how long until I was able to eat again. Yeah, I had a son at home with me yet for 2 years. He was an adult, but so I had to cook for him. So I did, but my appetite was affected.
After I lost my husband, in those first few days after 9/11, I was not sleeping at all, and no amount of tranquilizers was doing it for me. And again, it was such a horrific tragedy. I don't think anybody slept in those first few days. After a while, that lasted for several weeks, I would say. But then after a while, it almost rebounded to the other extreme, and I wouldn't get out of bed and just couldn't really seem to function. You go through stages. Your body physically takes quite a toll after a major loss, after the loss of the one you hold dear.
I hardly ever slept. Tylenol PM became my friend. So I remember buying like a big jar of Tylenol PMs. And then I remember when I really realized I had a problem relying on the Tylenol PMs was when I went to buy my second big bottle. Within a month's time, I said, I can't do this. I have a problem. So my sleep was affected because I relied on the Tylenol to make me sleep. And it was because the vision I had in my head at night when I would try to relax and try to go to sleep, the only thing that I could see in my head was him in that body bag. And when they unzipped it for me to identify his body, it kept coming to me, and I would try to think of flowers. I would try to think of horses running by, but I couldn't. No matter what I tried, somehow that vision came back to me. So the only thing that made me sleep was Tylenol.
I wake up a lot at night and think of him. I dream of him so often. I'm surprised that I still dream a lot of him. And sometimes he's well, and sometimes he's calling for me, and sometimes he's packing a wheelchair in my dreams. But then you wake up and he's still gone.
The hardest time of the day for me is around 4:30, because that's the time my husband used to come home every day. I remember it every day almost. I get through it quickly. I'm emotionally now, but it passes now. It passes, but that's the time. I always remember 4:30. He used to get home. I can still see him coming through the back door and coming up the stairs. I can still see that. I can still see that. I can remember it very well. Hope I always will.